Do you know what it means to hold a memory that no one else remembers? To be the last living thread in a tapestry slowly unraveling? Among the Hadzabe, one of the last true hunter-gatherer tribes on Earth, there was a man they all called the Firekeeper, not because he held matches, but because he held stories. His name was not carved on any stone. He never went to school. He never owned anything. But at 94 years old, he remembered things no one else did. He was the last one alive who had sat in a circle when the elders spoke in the dark. He was the last one who still gathered roots by scent, not sight. He was the last one who could mimic the sound of the night bird that only calls before rain. They say that when he walked, the earth remembered, and when he lay down for the last time, they say he whispered something that made every young Hadzabe man cry. This is not a tale of death. It is a lesson about aging that our world forgot, and one that we must now remember before it is too late. You see, among the Hadzabe, getting old is not something that people dread. There is no shame in wrinkles, no embarrassment in forgetfulness, no panic when strength begins to fade. Aging is not a sign of failing. It is a sign that you have lived fully. It is proof that the land has accepted your weight again and again and still welcomes it. The elder, let's call him Lendu, though his real name is only spoken among his people, used to say something simple each evening before sleep. He would place both hands on his chest, close his eyes, and murmur a sentence, always the same. I am still here and the sky has not fallen. No complaints, no regrets, no countdowns, just presence. That was his medicine. In the modern world, we panic when we forget a word. We worry when our legs ache or when sleep becomes lighter. We fill our cabinets with pills and our schedules with reminders. But the Hadzabe, they rely on something else entirely. They rely on attention. Attention to the sound of birds at dawn, to the scent of a tree in a different season, to the silence between heartbeats after a long walk. They do not diagnose aging. They observe it gently. They accept it completely, and in this they find peace. Lendu lived his last 10 years with no teeth. He could not hunt. He did not gather honey. But every evening, young boys would come sit beside him and ask questions, not because he had answers, but because he had presence. And presence, among the Hadzabe, is what keeps the fire burning. They do not teach with rules. They teach with stories. They teach with time. And time is something that slows when you sit beside an elder who no longer needs to prove anything. One day, someone asked him, "What should we fear most when we grow old?" He smiled, showing no teeth, and answered, "Forgetting how to watch the wind." To most, that sounds poetic. But to the Hadzabe, it's practical. Wind carries sense. It signals changes. It warns of movement. It teaches. But more than anything, it slows you down. You can't rush when you're watching the wind. You have to be still, and that stillness is where wisdom begins. You may live in a city. You may have technology, noise, and news. But you also have your breath. You also have your skin. You also have moments, each day, where silence can return. And that's what Lendu wanted us to remember. Aging is not the end. It is a return to a different kind of listening. When you stop trying to be who you were and begin to become who you are now. When you let go of speed and rediscover rhythm. When you stop trying to fix yourself and instead begin to care for yourself. That's when aging softens. In his last days, they say Lendu no longer spoke. Not because he was too weak, but because he had said what needed to be said. He simply sat with the young. Let their questions come. Let the fire crackle. Let the stories breathe. And when he finally closed his eyes, his final breath was silent, but not empty. The elders say that silence carried meaning. It said, "I watched the wind, and I was not afraid." They say the Hadzabe don't own clocks, but they know time better than we do. They know when a fruit will ripen by how the birds sing near the tree. They know how old a hunter is by how he breathes after the third hill. They know when it's going to rain by the smell of ants in the air. And they know when a person is getting close to death, not by machine, not by numbers, but by the softness of their presence, the way the body begins to lean more into the earth, the way the eyes don't search anymore, but receive. Lendu, The elder whose final lesson this is used to say, "Your body writes its own stories, but only if you learn how to read them." That's the kind of wisdom that doesn't make it into textbooks. It's the kind of knowing that comes from a lifetime of watching, not screens, but soil, not charts, but children. In the Hadzabe tradition, elders are not separated from daily life. They don't retire. They don't fade into the background. They shift roles from doing to guiding, from chasing to holding, from moving to anchoring. And in that shift, they gain something we too often lose: clarity. In the world most seniors live in today, aging is often experienced as subtraction. A little less strength, a little less speed, a little less memory. But for the Hadzabe, aging is addition. More quiet, more observation, more attention to what truly matters. And perhaps the deepest of all, more connection to the unseen. It is said that when a Hadzabe elder dies, the tribe doesn't say he is gone. They say he has become the silence in the trees. What a beautiful way to be remembered, not as someone who vanished, but as someone who became part of the listening that never ends. Lendu was once a hunter, but in his later years, he became a keeper of stories, and not just stories of bravery or tradition, but of mistakes, tenderness, and the slow understanding that everything changes. He told the young ones, "You must learn how to leave something behind that cannot rot." It was not land. It was not food. It was not even children. It was wisdom, spoken, heard, carried forward. Among the Hadzabe, there is a tradition, rarely spoken of, where an elder whispers a truth to a child just after dusk on the night of a new moon. No one else is present. No one else hears. The elder chooses a child, not for strength, but for stillness. Linda chose a boy named Tuma. He was quiet, often alone, not the fastest, not the boldest. But he listened, and when Lendu's final days came, it was Tuma who sat beside him, not speaking, just being there. That night, they say, Lendu leaned close and said only one sentence: "Don't forget to carry your fire inside, even when no one else sees it." It doesn't sound like much, but to the Hadzabe, fire is life. It is how they cook, how they stay warm, how they keep predators away. But more than that, it is a symbol of presence, of inner light, of unshaken dignity. And so when he said that, he wasn't talking about flame. He was talking about self-respect, about carrying your worth even when your body weakens, about remembering that who you are is not what you do, but what you remain faithful to. Most seniors in today's world live surrounded by noise, but inside they feel unseen. Their stories go untold. Their presence goes unacknowledged. And slowly, their fire dims, not from age, but from neglect. What would happen if, like the Hadzabe, we honored that fire? What if instead of asking, "How old are you?" we asked, "What have you come to understand?" What if instead of offering advice, we sat beside the elderly and said, "Tell me what the wind has taught you"? You see, in Hadzabe culture, age does not make you irrelevant. It makes you essential. And this is what Lendu wanted the world to remember. Not just the facts of his life, but the feeling of it, the way he moved more slowly, but with purpose, the way he laughed less often, but more deeply, the way he carried the silence, not as a burden, but as a gift. We don't need to live like the Hadzabe, but we do need to remember what they never forgot, that aging is not a tragedy. It is a sacred return to the self, to stillness, to the fire that was never meant to burn out, only to burn inward. Lenda's story is not just his own. It is the story of every elder who still has something to give, but no one to give it to. Let us be the ones who sit down and listen. The Hadzabe have no written language, no textbooks, no digital archives, but they carry knowledge with more care than any library. When an elder dies, a world disappears, unless someone was there to listen. Lendu used to say that the world forgets not through violence, but through speed. Not because we're bad, but because we're busy. Among the Hadzabe, remembering is an act of slowness. They do not rush through stories. They do not cut people off. They wait, they observe, they absorb, and in this waiting, a truth becomes clear. The body doesn't age because it breaks. It ages because the world stops making space for it. In the villages far from the Hadzabe, older people are often told to rest, to sit, to let others take over. But rest without purpose becomes exile. Silence without invitation becomes erasure. But in Lenda's world, the elders move less, but mean more. They do not chase animals. They chase meaning. They chase clarity. They chase peace. You might think that such a life is lonely, but it isn't, because when the pace of life is slow, the space between people becomes large enough for presence to stretch and settle. There is always a place for the elder's hand, a place for their voice, a place for their silence. And this, more than anything, is what many modern seniors have lost. A place to be without proving, without apologizing, without rushing. One of the most powerful things Lendu ever said came not as a warning, but as a reflection. A boy once asked him, "What's the most painful thing you ever saw?" He didn't speak for a long time. Then he answered, "Watching a man walk fast past a tree and never greet it." It sounds simple, even strange, but it reveals everything about the Hadzabe way of seeing. For them, every tree has a story. Every path is a memory. Every silence is full of someone's presence. To walk past something without greeting, it is not just rude. It is careless. It is a sign that you are no longer truly alive to what surrounds you. And isn't that what often happens with age? We walk past ourselves. We forget to greet our bodies. We ignore the tree of our own memories. We become efficient but disconnected, functional but hollow. And the Hadzabe show us, gently, that this isn't necessary. There is another practice they keep, especially in older age. Each night, before the fire fades, the elder touches the earth. Just once, not for prayer, not for ritual, but for remembering. It's a way to say, I came from this. I am still part of this. I will return to this. This is not superstition. It is grounding, both literally and spiritually. In our modern lives, we often age with our heads. We worry. We analyze. We regret. But the Hadzabe age with their whole bodies. Their feet still feel the soil. Their hands still touch the bark. Their ears still listen for the owl's cry. They do not try to escape the body as it slows. They return to it. Lendu once sat with a woman who had just lost her husband. She had stopped eating, stopped speaking. Her eyes were open, but she wasn't really there. He sat beside her for hours, did not say a word, and then he placed her hand on the ground gently. "Listen to the soil," he said. "It remembers what you forgot." That moment brought her back, not because it fixed anything, but because it reconnected her with something that didn't ask her to move on, but to belong again. So many seniors today live in quiet grief, not always over death, sometimes over time, over missed chances, over lost connection, over the feeling that they are fading, one unnoticed day at a time. But what if, like the Hadzabe, we didn't need answers to find peace? What if we didn't need closure, only reconnection? Lendon never studied psychology, but he knew how to sit beside someone without fear. He knew how to witness pain without trying to change it. And that's a kind of healing modern medicine rarely offers. In your own aging, you may feel your body change. You may feel your voice isn't heard the same way. You may wonder if your days are still filled with meaning. But perhaps what the Hadzabe have to teach us is this. Your value doesn't fade. Your pace just changes. And the world still needs what only you can give, if only someone will sit down and listen. Maybe today, that someone is you. There was no ceremony when Lenda died. No headline. No monument. No funeral march. Only the quiet crackle of fire and a few boys who sat near his sleeping mat, watching his chest rise slower than the stars overhead. He passed as he had lived, without noise, but never without meaning. The morning after, they did not cry loudly. The Hadzabe do not mourn with volume. They mourn with memory. Each person did something small to honor him. One man walked to the oldest tree and sat beneath it for an hour. A child drew in the dust with a stick, then erased it with his hand. And a woman laid a basket of dried roots beside a rock he had always rested on. This was their ritual. Simple, still, and somehow more powerful than anything that needed words. You see, Lenda had lived long not because he had medicine, but because he had meaning. Every day, even in his frailty, he contributed. He told the names of stars. He reminded people where the old honey trees were. He sang songs only he remembered. And in doing so, he did what so many seniors today are desperate to do. He remained useful, not by effort, but by presence. He didn't strive to be relevant. He simply was. And that is what made him unforgettable. In our world, so many older people fight invisibility. They try to prove they still matter. They chase updates, adapt to new rules, learn technology not out of joy, but out of fear. Fear of being left behind. Fear of being seen as obsolete. Fear of becoming a burden. But Lenda shows us something different. He shows us that aging doesn't require performing. It requires returning. Returning to what is essential. To slowness. To silence. To story. To the small acts that hold deep meaning, even if no one claps for them. The Hadzabe don't ask their elders to change. They change the space around them to let them be. They slow their pace to match the elder's steps. They cook softer roots when his teeth are gone. They speak less when he wants to speak more. And in doing so, they remind us. A society doesn't measure its greatness by how it treats its fastest, but by how it honors its slowest. There's one last story about Lendu that the children still whisper. A few weeks before he passed, a small girl asked him, "What makes a person wise?" He looked at her, long and quiet, then replied, "Wisdom is not knowing more. It's needing less and still being full." That phrase stayed with her, and over time it spread. Now, whenever someone in the tribe finishes a task with care, they say, "Full," not "good job." Not perfect, just full. Because that's what aging with dignity feels like. Not perfect, not praised, but complete. If you are reading this and you feel like the world has moved on without you, if you feel like your body is slower, your voice softer, your presence overlooked, remember Lendu. He was not fast. He was not loud. He was not wealthy. But he was whole. And that wholeness came not from doing everything, but from doing one thing well, being there, fully, quietly, with love. The modern world will not slow down for us, but we can slow down for ourselves. We can touch the earth in the evening, as he did. We can sit a little longer with someone we love. We can tell a story, not because it's new, but because it's true. And we can remember, the fire does not have to burn bright to be real. Sometimes the embers are enough. Lendu is gone now, but his lesson remains. It is not a rule book, not a warning, but a soft invitation to age with peace, to live with stillness, to let silence teach, to trust that even when the world forgets, there's a place where you are still full, and it begins inside you